go.
Very good. So I guess I'm one of the many TCGplayer people that has actually come here and talked to you guys. I didn't realize that my boss, John McDonald, actually had talked to you guys. I saw Ed's presentation, and I was just like, man, I got to message Jesse because Ed did such a good job. And I think I told Jesse this. I sent some of the designers this so they could come talk to you guys too, because I imagine everyone's interested in UI too, if you're interested in this. So we'll see if some of the designers come and talk to you guys, kind of getting all the facets of what we do at TCGplayer and how we work as a software team. But so a little intro about me, just so you guys understand my background. So I went to school at Liverpool High School. That's where I learned that I liked coding. I knew I liked engineering. I was in like the Project Lead the Way program. Got a little Liverpool High School. Yeah, so I went to Liverpool, so I'm local. And I knew I liked engineering, but I got into a Java class, and that's where I kind of realized that I really liked it. So I ended up going to UB for computer engineering. So I thought I was going to work with hardware, and I end up getting out of college, and I start working on a network monitoring solution. If any of you guys watch Silicon Valley at all, The Box, the one episode, I worked on like The Box. So kind of when I was there, I went through all stages of technology pretty much. I started in QA. They wouldn't let me touch any code for 6 months, so I started testing, started doing development, ended up leading a team, and then getting into product management. While I was at my previous employer, we started doing a lot of mobile development, and I kind of led that project, and that's what transitioned me into TCGplayer. Kind of, on the topic of community involvement and moving to TCGplayer, really without Hack Upstate and coming to the hackathon, I would have never gotten a job at TCGplayer, I don't think. Like Jesse said, I met him 5 or so years ago, and I came and I participated, and I had a really good time, just using the time to work on whatever I wanted to work on. I ended up getting my previous employer to sponsor it, and kind of because of that, like I had met with Doug and talked to him a whole bunch of times, and ended up judging. And just keeping in contact with Doug, I saw that TCGplayer had an open position, and I was like, hey, Doug, do you think you can get me in? Do you think you know anybody over there? And kind of, 2 years later, I now work at TCGplayer. I had a really good fit, and I really kind of, I don't think I would be at TCGplayer without going to Hack Upstate, knowing Doug, making these connections. So really, you guys have a great opportunity being here. There's so many people here to get in touch with, to leverage, wherever you guys choose to go after this. So really cherish those connections. Like I said, I met Jesse 5 years ago, got him an internship, and I'm back here now talking about this with you guys. So really the connections go a long way. They may seem really small and maybe hard to make connections, but they really pay off in the long run, and it's something you guys should definitely focus on building. I know when I listened to, I think it was Ed's presentation, a lot of the questions were around just networking. Like Ed didn't have any software experience, and he just came in and started talking to people, and he's doing great stuff now. So really just, it's tough. Like I'm a little shy. So if you guys are shy like me, just try and put yourself out there. Everyone in this community is extremely welcoming, so definitely should try and do that. I think it's one of the hardest things to do, at least for me, unless you guys are extroverted. And so the one thing I wanted to talk about was what is a product team? So when I went to school at Buffalo, I literally just thought software was just writing code, and there's like team leads, and you guys just work together to build really cool stuff. So I had no clue what the heck product team was. I didn't know much of anything. And kind of coming out of school, I was just focused on being an engineer. That was the only thing I was really focused on. I never thought there was other skills with software that you could build upon and really kind of accelerate your career through. I thought it was all about coding. If you weren't a good coder, you wouldn't be good in the engineering world. But really, that's wrong. There are tons of people I work with that have no software experience but are great leaders, and they're great team members, and they really help us drive projects home. So I ended up getting into product kind of by leading a team. We had one of the guys who was actually our product owner get sick, and I got some experience with that, and I really started to like it. And I ended up, I think, probably about 2.5, 3 years ago, not coding at all anymore. So right now at TCGplayer, I don't write any code, but I work on software every single day. So if you guys really like coding, stick with it. I still really like coding. I code in my free time. But if you find throughout your journeys that you're stronger at managing a team and working on a product, then go for it. It's not all about development. So kind of what is a product team? So really what we focus on with our product team is research, strategy, road mapping, and executing on that strategy. So really, we work with our development leads, our architects, our leadership teams to define what we're going to work on. And I find that really exciting and really fun. From there, like this role in product, there's many different roles within the teams, and that can go from someone who's really strategic and high level and they're doing a lot of planning and leadership to someone who's in there with the development teams, helping them get stuff done. Really kind of on the ground level, being really tactical with the teams. But most importantly, with product, you have to your bread and butter is knowing the why and the what. So what that means is, why are we building something? If you don't understand the why behind building something, it's never going to come out right. I'm trying to think of a good example for you guys. So a lot of the time when you're trying to move a team towards getting a project and executing, without knowing that why, it's really tough. People make assumptions. So having someone who's like that point of truth and can get that stuff documented and facilitate it out to the team helps everyone work really collaboratively towards the same goal. I'm not thinking some function does X when someone else is thinking some function does Y. So that's really just kind of focusing on that and being able to facilitate that information to the team. Kind of right there, it says, at best, product teams provide cross-functional leadership. So we not only work within our team, but we work with other teams. I think you guys can probably see things all over the internet that probably span multiple teams at a software company. So we essentially build those connections with the teams and really work together to build a project that not only works for one team, works for another team. So a really good example of that is APIs. If you guys are familiar with APIs, just building something that many teams can leverage so you guys don't have to do it twice. You don't have to duplicate code and incur tech debt. Really just focusing on making sure that what you're building will suit not only one team, but many teams. So really, it's a lot of fun just working with everyone and getting everyone to work together and kind of drive that vision. Anything else before I move on to the next subject? Yeah, question.
I'm kind of getting confused. So a product team is the people that manage people who are focused on coding.
So we don't necessarily manage people. So within a dev team, right, we have our developers, then we have a dev lead, and then on top of that we have an engineering manager, and then a director of development, and then a CTO. So realistically, CTO, Chief Technology Officer. So we're managing the product, right? Whereas the engineering team's managers are managing the actual people. But as a team, we're leading the whole team together with the dev lead.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So you're on the dev lead level?
Yep, that's where typically like the product owner will be. The product owner will work with the PM or the director of product, and we'll have the strategy defined. And we'll say, all right, guys, you guys have done the research. We know it's time to build, this email service. Like, let's get together. Let's plan this email service out, right? Here's all of our functional requirements, right? It needs to be able to send an email. I need to be able to put a title in. I need to be able to attach images. So really, the product person is defining all of those functional requirements with the dev lead. It's a collaborative relationship, but really the product person is focusing on, hey, here's what I need from a product perspective. This is the functionality it needs to work. or the functionality that needs to work, and the dev lead's bringing the technical side. All right, I need to be able to upload an image. I need an image service. Where the heck are the images going to go? Right? So it's taking that functional requirement standpoint with the technical requirements and putting them together. Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
I've seen a lot of, I've been in management and social work. I've seen a lot of like online courses, project manager certificate. Project manager keeps everyone in line and makes your workflow happen.
So that was one of the things I was trying to figure out if I was going to put it in this slide or not, or in one of these decks. So there's a difference between a project manager and a product manager or a product owner, right?
What is the product owner's client?
So product owner is what I just described. They're working on defining those functional requirements. We always try to not look at them as a client because we want to focus that the product owner or the product representative and the team they're a team, right? Yeah, there's not someone who's going and just throwing something over the fence and saying, hey, I need you to do this for me, right? They're working collaboratively together to build something. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, the reason I started off with the what and the why earlier is because that's what product focuses on. Now, project management, like you said, focuses on the when and the how, right? Yep.
So what does a product owner need from TCGplayer? Are you talking from the perspective of the people who own the cards? Like,
no. So the product owner owns technology. So what is the product? Like let's use an example on TCGplayer search. That's something we just went and revamped our search service.
Okay.
So leadership, so like the product director and I will work together and we'll say, all right, what are the things that are really poor on our site? One of them was search, right? And we say, hey, we want to fix search. And we work out a timeline with our program director and we say, hey, this is a great time to work on search. So I work with the dev lead and the product owner to say, hey, guys, let's do search. Let's start doing some research. Let's figure out how we're going to solve this problem, right? Now, the product owner will take that and be like, okay, search. Now, what is the vision for search? And I'll tell them, we want to make search fast. We want to make the search terms more relevant, right? And we want to increase conversion.
So your products are your business services.
Yep, exactly. Yep, you got it. Yeah, so it could be an email service. It could be search. It could be pretty much anything you use on a website we call a product. Yeah.
But within the company, you have the designated product owner.
Yep.
As a role.
Yep. So the way I'll give you an example if you guys have ever been on our site. The way we have products split up. One of them there's a marketplace team. So marketplace team owns search. They own our homepage. They own our search results page. They own the product details page, and that's what they own. That's what that team owns. We have an app team. That app team owns the app. Right, that's what that product owner and the team owns. We have an admin panel for sellers, for someone to manage their account. That's what they own. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's typically how these teams get split up. They have very specific areas that they work together, and that's what they focus on building. So each team has their own roadmap, right, on the features that they want to work on and they want to build. And those project managers that you asked about earlier, they help facilitate, hey, you guys are working on something that's going to impact each other. Like, let's work together and find the right time to build that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What called it something, it's coming. So. Not the what and the why, but yeah, it does.
Okay.
No, I can really visualize it, which is awesome.
So the project teams come together, they throw out a list of all their needs and then they start figuring out how to put it all together.
Yeah, so when so are you referring to like we know there's a product that will touch many people, is that what you mean? Like multiple teams are going to work together on it, or?
Well, you said you want to make sure that you build something with many of the teams so you don't have to go twice. So
Yep.
it's kind of like the meeting of the minds.
Yeah.
You say we need this, but we want to make sure that it's cross-functional across the different departments.
So I'll continue on that search example. Right, so I tell my product owner, hey, we're going to build search. Now, that product owner does research, and he figures out who all the key stakeholders are, right? Let's say you're on a team that works in the admin panel that I mentioned where sellers upload cards for sale. They probably search for stuff there, right? There's a lot of cards in our inventory. So he's like, all right, I know this team over here is going to use search. I know I'm going to use search on the homepage. The app team might want to use search. Let me go talk to all of those people, those stakeholders, and get feedback. So when I build search, I can build it once and everyone can use it, right?
Right, so it's working on the web, it's working on the app.
Yeah, and you may have different requirements. Like if you're on the app team, you may have different requirements than,
Something for a customer.
yeah, yep, exactly. You may have different technical requirements other than just product, like feature requirements. Does that make sense?
Makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
How do you split up your teams? Is it by just the overall functionality of the site, or is it by expertise in the individual, like games or?
Like the time. The departments are saying this is what we need.
So really the way the teams get split up is usually when a project becomes too big or a feature becomes too big and you need a lot of people to work on it, or it's taking a lot of time for one team, we'll branch out another team and we'll make that team own that project or that product. Does that make sense? So we have a part of our search effort that we recently just did. We have a data services team, and they own all of search, and that's all they own. So pretty much what they're doing is they're building the search algorithm for relevance. They're making sure the API is stood up. They're making sure that they can look at all of our inventory, and when new products get released and we upload them to our site, they ingest those products. So that team, like search, seems really small and easy, but search got so big that we're like, all right, we need a search team. Does that make sense?
So you probably pick like representatives from key areas.
Yep.
Form a committee.
Usually we just, someone will typically spearhead a project, someone who's really interested in it, and we call those subject matter experts. And usually those subject matter experts become like the lead of the team. Someone who knows a lot about that feature, or is typically the person who keeps taking work on for it. So I'll use a different example for a different project. Our app team, we have a guy who's really, really good at the front end, and a guy who's really good at the back end. Now that front end guy, he's like our front end SME. So like when I say, hey, let's revamp the navigation, he's gonna run with that project. He's our front end guy. And so when someone in a team with like a feature that gets really big like that, who just keeps taking on work, they become the SME. They know the insides and the outsides of that whole feature. So they become like the team lead. Any other questions before I move on? Yeah.
Confirm this for me.
Yeah.
So like, when you're in like the software industry, they go from like, I don't know if it's even like promotions, but
Mhm.
they go to advance. It's
Yeah.
more like based on like skill and know-how
Mm-hmm.
and like what you can prove. Is that correct?
So skill and know-how is interesting. So I'd say definitely skill, right? Whereas think about know-how, right? You could have tons of experience doing something and then transition to a different company and you may not know anything about their technology, right? So it has a lot to do with experience and knowledge and a lot of situations that you've been in. Does that make sense? So when I got brought into TCGplayer, I was leading our app teams in that whole like division that we had created around apps, and they had just acquired an app. They're like, hey, you know stuff about apps, can you come work for us? So I didn't know anything about their app. Turns out it was actually built on Xamarin. I was more of a Swift developer and Java developer, so I didn't know anything about Xamarin. I just knew how to make an app. And it was just like that experience of building an app from scratch and releasing it in the App Store that was really valuable. And just my experience working with technology teams really applied to that. It wasn't that I knew the insides and outs of that project, but especially with dev leads. Dev leads become, they become the subject matter experts on stuff, and they're really good with a team, and they become, that's kind of usually how a dev lead will emerge. When you have someone who's more like a manager, like you had mentioned earlier, like managing people, that's someone who's just shown that they have really good leadership and they have really good people skills, and everyone likes that person. That's typically how I've seen the experience of like picking a manager. Someone who's really good at talking to people, everyone likes. They're strong with technology, and they're just strong with people. And they want to do a role like that. So and being a manager isn't necessarily a promotion, right? Because managing people is completely different. Then it's a completely different challenge. So you can rise through the ranks as an engineer. Absolutely, you could be the best engineer. Have you guys ever heard of an architecture team? No?
Yeah, I don't know what they
Not in
do.
this.
Yeah. So our architecture team was like some of our best developers, and they didn't want to manage people. They didn't want to manage products. They just wanted to keep building awesome stuff. So they were like the best engineers. So we said, all right, let's make like a super engineer team who anytime we go to build something new or we want to update something, we go and look at those guys and say, hey, can you help us? We've never done this before. We don't know what to do. Can you give us some direction? Right? They do research on the current technologies that exist. They prototype, and they give us a recommendation. They usually give us a couple different recommendations. So being a manager is definitely not a promotion or the only way to rise through the ranks of a technology company.
I think I like the flexibility of what TCGplayer decides to do with its human resources. It's like people are coming in, they're finding their niche within the company, and because the company is comfortable in trusting you all to kind of fit in where you get in, the company has seen tremendous growth as a result of that, and you don't see a lot of companies doing that. I don't
Yeah.
feel about that.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, I'm a really good example of that. So I was brought on to work on the app team. Within 8 months, I had 3 more teams of just working there. So yeah, no, you're exactly right. They are very strong at that. If there's someone who they find and they trust in and they want to see that person grow, they absolutely take advantage of that.
So now, who was the person who you go to and say, hey, it started out as 1, but now we've split into 3? Because I know there's somebody at the top who wants to know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So he or she at least knows what everyone is doing.
Yeah, so we have I would say a pretty traditional horizontal team structure, right? So we have at the top we have a leadership team. The leadership team consists of the CEO, the CTO. We have a CIO, which is Chief Innovation Officer. They really work on making sure that we're all working effectively together. They're kind of like the process guru and looking at areas that we can really grow and expand. They kind of do everything. And then we've got the head of marketing, the head of finance, the head of HR, etc. Right? And then below that we have directors. And then below the directors we have the managers, and then below that we have the leads. So we kind of have this structure that's not really tall. It's very wide, and it gives that freedom and that room to grow for people and really own the work that they're doing. A lot of modern technology companies kind of take that horizontal approach now.
Is it a fun environment?
Absolutely, yeah. It can be stressful,
Things
but
that are cool, sometimes you think, oh, that would be so cool, and then you talk to people and they're not happy. So
yeah,
it's hard to judge just by, you have to kind of be in
yeah, yeah. I know on Syracuse.com we got a bunch of interesting comments about how it's an adult playground, but no, it's really fun. Yeah.
Syracuse.com is those commenters.
Yeah.
Type fun.
Yeah. Yeah, but no, it's really fun, especially you guys are here after your day jobs, after anything you do, and you guys really must have an interest in software. And if you do, like, you will have fun there, especially no matter what. It can be tough, it can be stressful, but absolutely. Gaming information and make it easily accessible and useful to people. So that's really kind of what we're just focusing on right now. We don't have any plans to migrate to any other parts of any other niche markets right now. We're just kind of the TCGs and board games, and it's kind of our main focus at the moment. Esports is getting big though, so paying attention to that.
I have another question.
Yeah.
I've read many times that in general, and this is more like Silicon Valley sort of stuff, that it's a very young field, and there's a lot of ageism towards people who are like 40. So for those of us in general who are a little bit older than that, what do you find that to be the case? Do you worry about that? Do people seem to be of all ages? I I
Um,
mean, TCGplayer, the people I've seen have been a good mix. So
yeah, we definitely have a good mix. We're majority millennials at TCGplayer. That is the majority of us. My last software company I worked at, I was one of the youngest people there. It really depends on where you go, and we just hired our program director, who's I think he's like 55. So we literally have all age ranges, and I think one of the oldest employees we have is like 65, 70. So all age ranges, definitely.
Are they all gamers? I mean, it would seem like.
No, I didn't know how to play Magic or when I started.
Really?
No.
What about female representation?
Oh, yeah.
Do you have a fair number?
Yeah, we do. We won a bunch of awards. I think the past 2 years for best place for women to work in New York State.
The adult playground.
Yeah, at the adult playground. Yeah. But no, we definitely do. And I think we just hired a new designer who is female. I think we hired 2 new female engineers. I think I can't remember, but no, we have a bunch.
You said you hired a 55-year-old program director?
Yeah.
What is a program director?
Yeah. So.
Can you say something about where they came from?
Yeah, so we have people from all different areas, like I mentioned. Our program director specifically, he worked in electrical engineering with hardware. He had no software experience whatsoever. And what he does is he focuses on making sure that all the teams are executing and delivering on their deliverables. So if I say I'm going to work on a project, he's kind of checking in and making sure. He's not really a project manager. He's more of like a cross-divisional, multi-team, higher-level strategy guy. So when we're doing the road mapping, he's like looking at like the 6 months out, saying, "Hey guys, like I know you planned this, but you're gonna collide right here, and this isn't really gonna work. Like let's figure out how to solve this." So that's more of what he's looking at. All right, I'm gonna keep cruising through here. There's a section at the end. So what does a project manager do? So I am a product manager. Like I mentioned the word product owners earlier. So our structure is GM of product, which is John McDonald, who was here, or I don't know when he was, a little while ago. Yeah, so John was here. John's my boss. And then there's a product director, a product manager, and product owners. So I primarily am focusing on strategy and road mapping and research. So we're looking at the market, identifying areas that we can impact, looking at the product and seeing where our pain points are. I work with our designer, I work with our engineers. Engineers will tell me, hey, this is really slow, we should get this in. Designers will say, hey, there's a crazy drop off over here. We're losing tons of people for conversion. We need to work on this. So it's really talking to all of our teams and doing research and figuring out, all right, here's all the information. What do we do first? How can we do the most impactful work as fast as we can and kind of build that roadmap and take that roadmap and work with the product owner to get it into the teams and execute it. So the product owner, they're given a vision. They're saying they're responsible with taking that vision, like I mentioned with search, and bringing that into the team and working with the dev leads and the engineering team to build out the how. How are we going to solve this? What technologies are we going to use? And really just focusing on executing on that feature that we're building. Does that make sense? So how does product and development work? I know I kind of talked about this a lot already, but those product owners are embedded in all of the teams. They're considered a team member. They work with everyone from marketing to CSR, which is our customer service representatives, to sales. The dev lead and the product owner work together on making sure that anything that could go wrong is thought about and thought through, as well as just they're there to also build the morale of the team and tell people when they're doing a good job. It's not just about building cool stuff, but it's also about leading your team and making sure that everyone feels like they're doing a really good job, because a lot of the times people get so focused or they get so frustrated with doing something or solving a problem that they forget that they're doing awesome stuff. And we expect our product teams to really kind of encourage our teams to do great things and keep that morale up as well. Any other questions about how product and development kind of works together? I know we talked about a lot of it, and I'm kind of just, no. All right. So yeah, this is pretty much everything I already said. I'm trying to see if there's anything. Oh yeah, so I guess I'll go into more detail of how the teams work. I put that on here. So the way we typically do work is in sprints. Is anyone familiar with sprints? Okay, so we work in a 2-week sprint. Every sprint starts with a sprint planning. So the product owner and the dev lead will lead the sprint planning, and they will work with the team to say, hey, what can we take on? What can we do in 2 weeks? Is there anything we can't do? Everyone has a voice in this meeting. We don't want to take on too much work, to make people think that we're going to over-deliver. We don't want to take on too less work because people will think we don't know what we're doing. So they all work together to plan the sprint. Once that happens, typically the sprint will begin, and then during the sprint, we'll groom work items. So what grooming means is just we'll look at the work, we'll see if there's any more details needed before we pick it up in the next sprint planning, and we'll also point it. Is anyone familiar with pointing work items or anything like that? We typically point work items to kind of look at the size of what the work is. So if the work can't be pointed, if it's above a certain point level, we break it down into smaller chunks. We want work to be small and easy and manageable within a sprint, otherwise it's too big. So we typically use a scale of like 1, 2, 4, 8, 16. That's kind of the scale we use. Now, what we can do with that scale is when we have our backlog pointed, the team works through a couple sprints, we can begin to see what their velocity is. So we can kind of have a really, really rough estimate of when work will be done. So the team works together to build that estimation of how much a work item will take, and then take that and use that as velocity. So we say, hey, we groomed all of our work items for this email service. And we know because of our velocity, it's going to take us 3 weeks. So that's kind of how we do that.
Points are determined primarily by time.
Points are supposed to be determined by level of difficulty. Yep, so the harder something is to do, the higher points it'll get. We don't want to focus on points being time, because then it just becomes like, oh, I don't know if I can get this done in, or like people will kind of be like, oh, 3 points is like a day, right? So I think I can do that in a day, so it's a 3. It's not, oh, this is easy, so it's a 3. And then you start to look at stuff like that. It's a rough estimation, just for when we say, hey, this is when we think we'll be done. It's not to be leveraged to use as like a deadline. It's just kind of a planning tool. It helps us kind of coordinate and communicate when we think things will go out. And that's really important for like our CSR team. So we know when those customer service representatives know when work's going to be done that could impact them. That's helpful for marketing. So when they know, hey, I need to have this graphic to the team by whatever time because they're going to be ready in 3 weeks. Or our warehouse team, hey, I want to know when that new feature is coming out so I can get my team ready to learn about it and leverage it. Does that make sense? Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts, and it's really just that helpful coordination. So grooming and planning and velocity is really important for us. It helps us keep us all coordinated.
The velocity equation is points measured in difficulty and time.
We use it as we relate it to time. It's very loose. It's not supposed to be specific. It equates out to time. Like I know I have, this one engineer who's really smart. He's really good at solving those hard problems, and he can do like 2 8s in a sprint, right? But someone else may not be able to do those 8s as fast. And it kind of builds that balance of the team. It's supposed to be a...
I'm wondering about what you do with the turtles and the hares.
Yeah, we really, that's where they kind of level out. Those points kind of will level out. And the team also, when they pick points and they groom the work items, they will kind of level the points out themselves too. So it kind of is a naturally balancing scale. But at the end of the day, it's really, we never want to look at it as time. It's more of a, hey, we kind of know when this is going to be ready, and we never want to use these for deadlines. Really at TCGplayer, we don't focus on deadlines. We focus on making sure that people will do the best work and get it done when it's ready. Because really putting deadlines on someone, especially coding, like the hackathons, like Jesse was telling me how some of the projects didn't work, and it's tough when there's a deadline. You want to make sure it's perfect. Why?
I mean, like, with no deadline, but there's the 2-week sprint, and
So
at the end of that 2 weeks, there's supposed to be something shippable.
We always strive to have something shippable at the end of the 2 weeks, but if there isn't, it's okay, right? Some projects take multiple sprints. Not every project can be done in 2 weeks. That search service I told you about took like 3 months. We really want to strive to those 2-week deliverables, like work that can be delivered incrementally. Like, you're absolutely correct. Like, that's what you want to do. Sometimes it's just not possible.
Agile.
Yep, exactly. I'm exactly describing Agile. You're completely correct. Yeah.
It's like a 2-week check-in. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
are you ready? No, still not ready. All right, another 2 weeks. Come back. Are you ready?
So it's
Actually
the
doing agile.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, the one part that's really important about the 2-week cycle, though, that I was going to mention that I haven't gotten to is retrospectives. So it kind of gives you a cadence for demos and retrospectives. So at the end of that 2-week cycle, the team gets together and says, hey, what did we do well? What can we do better? And kind of having that 2-week check-in for your team can really accelerate the next sprint, right? And it can also solve any interpersonal problems on the team. So that 2-week cycle is not only for, hey, we should deliver every 2 weeks, but hey, let's also kind of get our team together and let's refocus and figure out what we did wrong and what we can do better. As well as demos. We kind of use that 2-week time as like, hey guys, this is what we're working on, this is what we're doing. It kind of gives people that showcase. You know, this is the cool stuff I worked on, or I stayed up all night working on because I was really interested in it. Does that make more sense? The other thing too with in the way technology is going is those 2-week cycles for releases. Like our app team, for example, we deploy whenever we have something ready. We don't wait at a 2-week cadence. We'll just, if it's ready, it's ready. We release it. So some teams do operate in that 2-week time frame because they have a more strict release cycle. But some teams, if they have all of the right environment set up, their CI/CD pipeline, and they're ready to go, and they've got something valuable to deliver to customers, they'll release it.
Is marketing responsible for responding each time the app team is ready? Are they like, Dad, you did it us again?
Usually the product owner will coordinate that stuff, right? The product owner knows, hey, I'm releasing this new feature. I need new screenshots, or I need a new release notes. And they go ahead and they gather that information and bring it back to the development team ahead of time. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you feel that having no set deadlines impacts team work ethic at all? Or do you think it kind of frees people up?
I think it frees people up.
Yeah.
There's definitely some people and some personalities that they work really well under pressure. But at the same time, I think it builds more of a fun environment where everyone's they're trying to do their best work. We really haven't had any problems with it, really at all. We have sometimes you have to have deadlines if there's like some type of law going out or anything like that. But most of the time we try and say it's ready when it's ready.
Wow, I see stuff like other people in there like want to fire me.
Yeah, it's definitely things like that are definitely a top down. If leadership doesn't believe in it, it's going to be really hard to get that set up and moving.
But isn't it also not that loose? Like it's also systematic and it makes things happen.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So it's not necessarily this ethics is free willing kind of whenever.
Yeah.
It's very
Oh yeah.
structured.
Yeah, everyone is very motivated to get their work out, right? Like anything you're working on, you're proud of it. You want to get it out as fast as you can. I don't think anyone's focusing on being like a perfectionist or waiting around for it, but they really want to get it out as soon as they can. Like the app team I mentioned that releases whenever. Sometimes they get a little bit too like trigger happy on releasing a feature. so it's it has its benefits to kind of have that flexibility, but also it can also kind of most of the time it works out and shapes itself really well. I think most of you guys, when you work on a project, you know when it's done, right? And you know when you're happy with it. And that's the same thing in how we operate for the most part.
So what are some games that TCGplayer have developed?
We don't actually develop any games. Yeah, so TCGplayer, and does anyone have any more questions on this before I cut to the next slide? It's just a questions slide since we're just doing questions by now. So TCGplayer has a platform architecture business model. So what that means is it's just like Facebook, it's just like Instagram, where we have producers and consumers. We have people who list things for sale and people who buy them, our consumers, just like Facebook and Instagram has producers and consumers. We're more of the online e-commerce type of business where we're selling and having people buy stuff. We aren't ever really making games. We have some awesome marketing team members who have made up content, kind of making fun of games, and we're doing a couple like funny things for Game of Thrones, but we're never actually like producing the games ourselves. I think we need definitely a different group of people that were really strong at game building and different development skill sets. Any other questions? Yeah.
How do you guys decide which games to cover? Like what to sell?
Yeah, so that's kind of something that we'll look at demand. It really comes down to demand. So Magic the Gathering, I had no idea how big it was until I started working at TCGplayer, and that's one of our biggest games, right? Then we have I think it's Yu-Gi-Oh is next, and then Pokemon, and but we still look at any other game that has a lot of demand behind it. I don't know if you guys have heard of Keyforge, but that game's brand new and there's a ton of demand for it, so we're looking at adding something like that. But we do have other games that people like to play that we're just like, hey, these people are coming to our site, they like to play games, they might like this, or they might like that. And it's usually demand and also timing. We try to make bets sometimes on if something's not out yet, will it be really popular? But yeah, it all comes down to demand. Any other questions?
Do you ever predict, well, like what's going to be popular?
Sometimes,
Yeah.
but it's usually with a lot of research and looking at trends. And that's usually, we only can do stuff like that with how Magic sets get released and the timing of them. But other stuff we have no idea. Like we thought Keyforge was going to be a flash in the pan, and its second set is coming out, and we're like, we have to get on the train. Yeah, and that's what that search feature I mentioned, like that's one of our most powerful tools. We can see what people are searching for, right? And we can use that as research to determine, hey, what should we do next? Right? Are people searching for something that isn't available on our site? Maybe that's a sign that we should add that. Any other questions? No? All right. If you want to reach out to me, this is my email address. My LinkedIn's on there. My GitHub's on there. I'm on the Hack Upstate Slack. So just if you have any other questions or you think of something any other time, you just look me up, shoot me a message. I'm always on Slack, so if I've got it on my phone, I always get pinged. So yeah, thanks for letting me come present. Thanks for asking so many questions. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, man.
Awesome. Just stream real quick.